Fear is not born in the dark. It is born in our minds. And what if a man could find the key to your mind, unlock it, and plant the seed of dread, making you fear the light of day, the friendly neighbor, the bird on the windowsill? There is a type of art that is not content to entertain. It seeks to control, to manipulate your emotions with the precision of a surgeon. Here on The Truth, Dark Psychology, we dissect the masters of this art. If you have the courage to understand how your own mind can be used against you, subscribe, like this video, and prepare yourself. Because today we will analyze the maestro of suspense, the architect of fear who turned cinema into his own private psychological laboratory. Alfred Hitchcock understood a fundamental truth of human psychology. The anxiety of waiting is infinitely more torturous than the shock of the event itself. He masterfully differentiated fright from suspense, and in this difference lies his manipulative genius. Fright, according to him, is cheap and fleeting. The true art lies in giving the audience a crucial piece of information that the characters on screen do not have. He doesn't just show us the explosion suddenly. He shows us the bomb under the table, the clock ticking, and forces us to watch the characters engage in banal conversation, completely oblivious to their imminent danger. This technique is a form of psychological control in its purest form. By making us privy to the information, Hitchcock locks us in a state of helplessness and anxiety. We want to scream at the screen to warn the hero, but we are mere spectators chained to our seats. This forced paralysis intensifies the tension to almost unbearable levels. He is not just telling a story. He is playing with our nervous system, stretching it like a rubber band, making us beg for the climax that will relieve the pressure he himself has meticulously built, second by second. The application of this technique goes beyond a simple narrative tool. It reveals a dark understanding of pleasure and pain. Hitchcock knew that by subjecting the audience to this psychological torture, he was also providing a form of masochistic pleasure. The release of tension, when it finally comes, is cathartic. He taught us to love fear, to seek the sensation of controlled anxiety that his films offered. He turned the audience into participants in an experiment, addicting us to the adrenaline of anticipation and the subsequent relief. This manipulation is so effective because it mirrors the anxieties of real life. We all live with metaphorical bombs under our tables. The fear of illness, of loss, of failure. Hitchcock took these abstract fears and made them concrete and visual. He gave us an object for our dread, a ticking clock for our anxiety. In doing so, he validated our internal fears while simultaneously giving us a safe environment in which to confront them. He was the master guiding us through our own personal hell, all the while maintaining control. In the end, the ticking bomb technique is a demonstration of power. Hitchcock positions himself as an almost godlike, omniscient figure who knows everyone's fate and delights in observing our agony. He doesn't give us what we want, which is a quick resolution, but rather what he knows we need for a deeper, more disturbing experience. He denies us relief to maximize the impact, a fundamental lesson from dark psychology. Control over someone's expectations is control over the entire person. One of the darkest and most uncomfortable pillars of Hitchcock's filmography is his deliberate exploration of voyeurism. In films like Rear Window, he not only tells a story about a man who spies on his neighbors, he turns the entire audience into complicit voyeurs. The camera becomes our eye, and we are forced to adopt the protagonist's perspective, looking into the private lives of others without their consent. Hitchcock understood the human impulse to watch, the forbidden curiosity about what happens behind closed doors, and he used it to morally implicate us in the plot. This technique is a brilliant psychological trap. By positioning us as secret observers, he dissolves the safe distance between the viewer and the screen. We are no longer passively watching a film. We are actively participating in the transgressive act of spying. This generates a conflicting feeling of excitement and guilt. We feel the thrill of the forbidden, but also the discomfort of our own indiscretion. Hitchcock seduces us into looking, and once we look, he judges us for it, making us as guilty as the characters we criticize. The manipulation deepens when the act of watching leads to dangerous consequences. The moment the observed character looks back, as in Rear Window, the viewer's safety is shattered. The film confronts us directly, implicitly breaking the fourth wall and asking us, "What are you doing?" This moment is psychologically devastating, as it reminds us that there is no observation without risk and that our curiosity can come at a price. It exposes the fragility of our position as safe spectators in the dark. Hitchcock explored this theme because he understood that cinema, in its essence, is an act of institutionalized voyeurism. We pay to sit in the dark and watch other people's lives, often in their most intimate and vulnerable moments. He just took this basic premise and made it the central theme of his works, forcing us to confront the nature of our own entertainment. He questioned whether our empathy was genuine or just a form of morbid curiosity, a desire to consume the drama of others to escape our own reality. Behind all this, there is a cynical view of human nature. Hitchcock seems to suggest that we all have a dark side, an innate desire to snoop and judge. His films give us permission to exercise this desire in a controlled environment, but they do so at a cost. He shows us the monster in the neighbor, across the courtyard, and in the process reveals the monster that exists within us. The dark lesson is that innocence is an illusion, and all it takes is an open window to make us all complicit in sin. The recurring figure of the Hitchcock blonde, Grace Kelly, Kim Novak, Tippi Hedren, is much more than an aesthetic preference. It is a complex psychological archetype and a tool of narrative manipulation. These women are presented as personifications of elegance, sophistication, and self-control, an icy facade that hides a volcano of secrets, repressed passions, or dangerous neuroses. Hitchcock used this duality to play with the audience's expectations and to explore male mistrust of female sexuality and autonomy. The external appearance of these characters is a deliberate bait. Their classic beauty and reserved demeanor make them objects of desire and mystery, attracting both the protagonist and the viewer. However, this apparent perfection is always a mask. Beneath the surface, they are often broken, manipulative, or involved in criminal plots. Hitchcock uses the dissonance between appearance and reality to create a constant sense of uncertainty. He teaches us not to trust beauty, to suspect perfection, subverting one of the most basic triggers of human perception. This dynamic exploits an anxiety deeply rooted in the male psyche of the time. The fear of the woman who cannot be easily read or controlled. The cool blonde is an enigma. Her calm exterior suggests she is always one step ahead, holding secrets that give her power. For Hitchcock's male protagonists, who are often ordinary men thrown into extraordinary circumstances, deciphering this woman becomes an obsession as great as solving the main mystery of the film. She is the prize and the trap all at once. The way Hitchcock filmed these actresses was also part of the manipulation. He dressed them in impeccable clothes and lit them almost like statues of gods, turning them into visual icons. This fetishistic treatment partially dehumanized them, making them unattainable ideals. By building this image of perfection, he made the subsequent revelation of their flaws or madness all the more shocking and disturbing. The fall from the pedestal was always more dramatic than that of an ordinary character. At its core, the cool blonde archetype is a study in deception and projection. The men in his films, and by extension the audience, project their fantasies of purity, mystery, and desire onto these women. Hitchcock then delights in shattering these projections, revealing the complexity and darkness that we would all prefer to ignore. He shows us that appearance is the most seductive lie of all, and that a person's true nature, hidden beneath a facade of control, is the most dangerous secret there is. Alfred Hitchcock was a master at dissolving moral boundaries, and one of his most subversive tactics was the transference of guilt. He wasn't content to make us feel fear for the characters. He made us feel guilt with the characters. He made us accomplices to their crimes, desires, and dark thoughts, blurring the line between good and evil until we were no longer sure who we should be rooting for. This technique is a profound psychological manipulation that forces us to confront our own capacity for darkness. In Psycho, for example, he makes us root for Marion Crane as she flees with the stolen money. We sympathize with her. We want her to get away. Then, he brutally kills her in the middle of the film, leaving us in a moral limbo. Our loyalty is forced to transfer to the only character left, Norman Bates. We come to fear him, but also to feel sorry for him. Hitchcock manipulates us so that, on some level, we hope Norman gets away with hiding the crime, making us accomplices to his actions. When the truth about him is revealed, the guilt falls on us for having, however briefly, aligned ourselves with the monster. This technique works by activating what psychology calls the shadow, the part of our psyche that contains our repressed impulses and socially unacceptable thoughts. Hitchcock gives us permission to explore this shadow through his characters. He makes us ask, in desperate circumstances, wouldn't I also steal the money? Wouldn't I also wish to hide a terrible secret? By placing us in the criminal's perspective, he shows us that the difference between us and them is merely circumstantial. The film Shadow of a Doubt, which Hitchcock considered his personal favorite, is the perfect example of this. Uncle Charlie is a charming murderer, and his niece, young Charlie, is torn between her love for him and the horrific truth. The audience goes through the same journey. We are seduced by Uncle Charlie's charisma, which makes his evil all the more disturbing. The guilt we feel is not just for his actions, but for our own susceptibility to his charm, our own failure to see the evil hiding behind a pleasant facade. In the end, the transference of guilt is Hitchcock's way of telling us that innocence is an illusion and that morality is fragile. He implicates us in his plot so that the experience of the film does not end when the credits roll. It stays with us, haunting us with uncomfortable questions about our own moral compass. He didn't just want to scare us, he wanted to corrupt us a little, to leave us with the indelible stain of complicity, proving that under the right circumstances, any one of us can become a monster. If this analysis is making you see cinema and the psychology behind it in a completely new way, do yourself a favor and like this video. And to ensure you don't miss our future dissections of the most manipulative minds in history, subscribe to The Truth, Dark Psychology. Leave a comment telling us which other director or public figure you believe is a master of manipulation. Your suggestion could be our next target. Now let's get back to the shadows. The wrong man theme is a constant in Hitchcock's work, a recurring nightmare where an ordinary man is mistaken for a criminal or a spy and forced to flee from a relentless authority and mysterious villains. In films like North by Northwest or The Wrong Man, the protagonist is torn from his normal life and thrown into a world of chaos and paranoia. This premise is a powerful psychological tool that explores universal fears of identity loss, powerlessness, and unjust persecution. The effectiveness of this narrative lies in its ability to generate immediate identification. We all, on some level, fear being misunderstood, falsely accused, or losing control over our lives. Hitchcock takes this latent anxiety and turns it into a high-octane thriller. The protagonist becomes our avatar, and his desperate struggle to prove his innocence and restore order to his life becomes our own. We feel his frustration, his panic, and his loneliness as he stands alone against a world that refuses to believe him. Psychologically, the wrong man theme explores the fragility of social identity. Our identity depends on the perception of others. When that perception is distorted and society labels us as something we are not, our reality begins to crumble. Hitchcock demonstrates how the institutions we trust, the police, the government, even our family, can turn against us based on a simple lie or mistake. This instills in the viewer a deep mistrust of power structures and the very notion of justice. The dark side of this exploration is the revelation that order and logic are just a thin veneer over chaos. The normal life of the wrong man is an illusion that can be shattered at any moment by a twist of fate. This reflects a deeply pessimistic worldview, where there is no real security and innocence is no protection. To survive, the common man must abandon his old certainties and learn to navigate an amoral world, often resorting to lies and deception himself, thus becoming a little like those who pursue him. In the end, the journey of the wrong man is a journey of forced self-discovery. By being stripped of his identity and security, the protagonist is forced to find strengths and resources he did not know he possessed. However, this transformation comes at a cost. Even if he clears his name, he can never go back to his old life with the same innocence. He has seen the abyss, the ease with which order can be destroyed. Hitchcock leaves us with this unsettling truth. Civilization is a house of cards, and a single puff of fate can bring it all down. Alfred Hitchcock's dark psychology was not confined to what he put on screen. It extended to his working methods, especially his relationships with his actors, and most notoriously his actresses. Accounts of his on-set behavior paint a portrait of a controlling and at times sadistic director who believed that actors should be treated like cattle. He saw the genuine emotion of fear and anguish from his actors as just another tool in his arsenal, and he did not hesitate to use psychological manipulation tactics to extract the performance he desired. The case of Tippi Hedren during the filming of The Birds is perhaps the most infamous example. For the attic attack scene, Hitchcock subjected her to days of filming where real birds were thrown at her, resulting in physical exhaustion and an emotional breakdown. He wasn't just directing a scene. He was orchestrating a traumatic event to capture an authentic reaction of terror. This is the epitome of dark manipulation, the exploitation of a person's vulnerability for artistic purposes, treating the human being as a mere instrument for his vision. This approach reveals a mindset where the ends justify the means. For Hitchcock, the perfection of the film, the creation of the perfect illusion of fear for the audience, was more important than the well-being of his collaborators. He blurred the line between direction and psychological abuse, using his power and authority as a director to control and intimidate. This behavior was often disguised as the eccentricity of a genius, but from a psychological perspective, it resembles the behavioral patterns of a narcissist who sees others only as extensions of his own will. His choice of actresses and the subsequent, controlling treatment can also be interpreted as an attempt to recreate and dominate the cool blonde archetype in real life. Reports indicate that he would become obsessive, trying to control not only their performances but also their personal lives, their clothes, and their companions. It was as if he wasn't content with creating these characters on screen. He felt the need to possess and mold them in reality, an impulse for control that transcends art and enters the realm of the pathological. Studying Hitchcock's behind-the-scenes behavior is crucial to understanding the totality of his art. It shows us that the same mind that could so brilliantly orchestrate fear on screen was also capable of inflicting it in real life. The obsession, control, and manipulation were not just themes in his films. They were the modus operandi of his life. This leaves us with an uncomfortable question. Can we separate the art from the artist? And is the fear we feel watching his films tainted by the awareness of the real suffering that was sometimes required to create it? Alfred Hitchcock's ultimate legacy lies not just in the films he made, but in how he permanently altered the public's perception of fear. Before him, horror was largely the domain of the fantastic, monsters, ghosts, and Gothic castles. Hitchcock brought fear home. He found it in the bathroom shower, in a flock of birds on a playground, in the friendly face of a neighbor. His greatest achievement was to normalize paranoia, teaching us that danger doesn't lurk in distant places but in the most mundane objects and situations of our daily lives. This democratization of fear is a form of mass psychological conditioning. By associating dread with common stimuli, Hitchcock created lasting triggers in the minds of his viewers. After watching Psycho, who hasn't felt a shiver of hesitation when showering in an unfamiliar motel? After The Birds, who hasn't looked at a large flock with a new sense of apprehension? He planted seeds of anxiety in our subconscious that blossom at the most unexpected moments, making the world a permanently less safe place. The dark genius of this approach is its sustainability. The fear of Dracula can be dispelled by logic, but the fear of a danger hidden in normalcy is much harder to eradicate. Hitchcock exploited the truth that the most potent source of fear is the betrayal of trust. We trust that a shower is a place of privacy and safety. We trust that birds are harmless. By shattering this trust, he shatters our sense of order in the world, leaving a psychological scar that makes us chronically distrustful. His legacy, therefore, is a culture of subtle paranoia. His films trained us to look for the sinister beneath the surface, to doubt appearances, to always expect the worst. He turned us into amateur detectives of our own lives, constantly scanning the environment for potential threats. While this can be seen as a way of making us more alert, it can also lead to a life of anxiety and suspicion, where peace of mind is constantly eroded by the question, what if? In the end, the master of suspense was not just making suspense films. He was giving us a lesson on the nature of fear itself. He showed us that the most effective fear is not what makes us jump, but what seeps into our minds and refuses to leave. He armed us with a new lens through which to see the world, a lens of suspicion and paranoia. And that lens, once adopted, is almost impossible to remove. That is the true and lasting power of Alfred Hitchcock's dark art. Fear is a weapon, and the cinema was Alfred Hitchcock's battlefield. He didn't just want your attention, he wanted your pulse, your anxiety, your submission. He proved that the greatest work of dark art is the successful manipulation of the human mind, and we willingly bought the ticket to be his guinea pigs. 2. Continue unraveling the tactics of the masters of manipulation. Subscribe now to The Truth, Dark Psychology. Turn on notifications so that the truth always finds you, and leave your comment below. Your insight is a key piece of the puzzle. Until next time, look over your shoulder and question everything, especially what seems normal.